I'm Tim Smith with the Adams County Historical Society, and welcome to an episode of Monuments Monday. You know, we've said before that here in the late winter, when it's not too cold out and there's still lots of visibility through the trees because the leaves haven't come back yet, this is a great time to walk the battlefield, and you can especially see the terrain features through the woods. So today we're here on Culp's Hill, and we're going to talk about Rock Creek and the 28th Pennsylvania skirmish line marker. So we're actually not too far from Rock Creek. And I've mentioned before in some of my videos that Rock Creek is sort of the eastern boundary of the Gettysburg National Military Park and the Gettysburg battlefield. And I thought I'd point out to start this video that if you'd like to visit Rock Creek and this monument, there are a few ways to do it, but I suggest you park here along East Confederate Avenue at the marker for Edward Johnson's division of General Richard Ewell's 2nd Army Corps. And so there's a nice parking area here, and you can park right here, and then you walk down the road towards Spangler Spring. And we're going to show you where you can turn off to see the 28th Pennsylvania skirmish line marker and Rock Creek. Okay, so again, we suggest that you walk down East Confederate Avenue from Johnson's divisional marker for, the Confederate division, and then down around a few turns to Maryland Stewart's brigade marker. Of course, Maryland Stewart being one of the brigades of Edward Johnson's division. And there's a little path you turn onto and walk out here to the marker for the 28th Pennsylvania Infantry skirmish line. The 28th Pennsylvania Infantry is part of Charles Candy's brigade, which is part of John White Geary's division. Remember, after the Civil War, John White Geary became the governor of Pennsylvania, and John White Geary was the original colonel of the 28th Pennsylvania. At the Battle of Gettysburg, General Geary commanded 3 brigades. And remember how we know those 3 brigades: candy, cane, and green, a green candy cane. One of our tricks for memorizing all the generals that were involved in the Battle of Gettysburg. But on the morning of July 2nd, when the Northern Army occupied Culp's Hill, about 8 a.m., the 28th Pennsylvania was sent out as a skirmish line along Rock Creek on the eastern slopes of Culp's Hill. And this unit actually is in position along the skirmish line until 7 p.m. or around 11 hours. And then they were called back with the rest of the division and then marched away. And of course, the Southern Army attacked Johnson's division. 3 brigades actually crossed Rock Creek and charged up the slopes of Culp's Hill and the Spangler property off to our the south here, and crossed this very ground. And of course, it was George Sears Green's brigade that on July 2nd held the line along the entrenchment up behind the camera position. But I think it's a great place to come out to, especially this time of year, because you can see the, expanse of the woods at the base of Culp's Hill and on the Spangler property, and you can get a feel for Rock Creek. Now, this monument itself to the 28th Pennsylvania was placed here, and I believe I have the date here. It was placed here, according to an article in the newspaper, in November 1904. So it's a relatively late monument. It's constructed of Westerly, Rhode Island granite. And of course, that was the Smith Granite Company, later like the Van Bridge Granite Company, something like that. Oh, I should also mention, besides John White Geary being the original colonel of this regiment, Colonel John P. Nicholson, who was later the chairman of the commission of the War Department that's in charge of the Gettysburg National Military Park. He actually was in this unit also. And we don't know exactly when it was dedicated, but it's placed here in November of 1904. And another great thing about coming here is there's a nice path, even in the summer, and from here in the back of the mine, there's a short little walk over to actually view Rock Creek. So let's talk about that now. One of the interesting things you see along the path between the monument to the 28th Pennsylvania and Rock Creek is the old Gettysburg National Military Park pipe rail fencing. And this fencing was placed along the boundaries of the park around 1900. And here along Rock Creek, which was once the boundary of the Gettysburg National Military Park, you can still see it today. You know, I think it is well worth it to walk down this path because, again, there's easy access to Rock Creek. There are plenty of places where that fence is not complete and you can just walk around and come up here to the bank of the creek. And, you know, Rock Creek was a major obstacle in the attack of Edward Johnson's division on the evening of July 2nd, on the morning of July 3rd. And one of the reasons is that at the time of the Civil War, there were several dams along the creek at McAllister's Mill and at a sawmill south of McAllister's Mill. And it backed up the water up the channel all along the base of Culp's Hill. And I think this is something that you really can't appreciate today, because when you come down here and you look into Rock Creek, the water might come up to your ankles, and in some places maybe it comes up to your shins. But according to the accounts of the Union and Confederate armies during the battle, it was much more of a formidable obstacle. As a matter of fact, according to Colonel Silas Colgrove of the 27th Indiana, who commanded a brigade here in Williams Division, the ground occupied by two of our regiments was protected in front by a small creek, Rocky Run, some 60 to 80 feet in width and from 6 to 8 feet deep, rendering the position of these two regiments not assailable from the east or the south. And again, you got to appreciate the way that these dams backed up the water at the time and what these accounts suggest. Thomas Ruger, who was also in that same brigade, in front of the line of the 3rd Brigade, Rocky Run, it was from 4 to 6 feet deep with a muddy bottom caused by a dam near the Baltimore Turnpike. The whole position was covered with rocks. Now, obviously, it's called Rock Creek because there's a lot of rocks in it. But that term, Rock Creek, appears on an early survey for the Manor of the Mask from like 1766, and also there's a 1765 draft for one of the properties here that actually shows that it's named Rock Creek. And in the 1760s, of course, we have Rock Creek Associated Reformed Church that was near Gettysburg. So it was quite an obstacle in the attack on Culp's Hill. And this is probably the best place on the Gettysburg National Military Park to see this creek. And because Rock Creek had a lot of rocks in it, and because of the popularity of stereo views that were recorded on the Gettysburg battlefield in the 1860s, we have a number of views of the rocks in the creek. Probably something like 30 different views. We'll show some of them here by the Tyson the C.J. Tyson, one of the Tyson brothers of Gettysburg, and also the Weavers recorded views along this creek. And of course, in a good stereo view, you have to have a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. And some of the rocks are very striking in these early stereo views. Maybe not so much in 2D, but in 3D with the viewer, Rock Creek really comes alive. So another thing about the 28th Pennsylvania, they originally placed a monument on the Gettysburg battlefield in October of 1885. And looking at the monuments prior to the road being here and the rocks that appear in the images with the original monument, it appears that it was some distance from this, just maybe 20 feet away. And then, of course, they got an allowance from the state of Pennsylvania, and then like other Pennsylvania units, they improved their monument. So they moved the monument, they put an extra slab in as a base, they took the hat off the top of the monument, put it in front, and put a star on top of the monument, and put an additional plaque on the monument on the back to give some more information about the unit and the war. Remember, if you like the content that we keep putting on our YouTube channel, please like and subscribe.